These books were not my worst books of the year. They were just books that I was so looking forward to, and I thought I was gonna love them, and I didn't. Hello lovely book dragons, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new here. My name is Joana, and I love to talk about books on this channel, specifically fantasy books, sometimes a little bit of romance, and trying to branch out this year. Today I want to talk with you about my most disappointing books of last year. These are by any means not bad books. A lot of them are 3-star books, but I was expecting more. I was expecting to love them, and I just didn't. So let's go. The first book I want to talk about was a book that I ended up DNFing in the end, and that was The Space Between Worlds by Micaiah Johnson. I was so looking forward to this. The premise of this is that there are parallel worlds, and that if you are alive in any other world, you cannot go there, but you can visit every single world that you're dead in. And our main character, she is dead in a lot of worlds, like in most of them. And so it's perfect. So she was hired by this agency, and she can go into all these worlds and see, for example, okay, well, they survived something that we don't know how to survive. So go there, get some data and bring it back here, etc., etc. So she goes and explores and sees what works, what doesn't work in other worlds, especially in worlds that are extremely close to her own world. So let's say if she lives in a world where basically our Earth, but imagine if there's like our Earth, exactly the same, but people can fly. So then she's going to go there and be like, why can people fly here? What is it that makes it work? And then she brings that intel back home. And that sounded amazing. It sounded like just like something I would absolutely love. Unfortunately, I didn't. I didn't care. That was the problem. I just did not care. A lot of the things were just a commentary on things that I didn't care about. And then the story wasn't exciting. I don't know, I was reading it and it felt like a chore. So I ended up messaging Angela, and I was like, Angela, could you please spoil the ending for me? And even she said, it's not about really what happens, it's more about how we get there, and how if you don't connect to our main character, if you don't connect to the themes that we're exploring, then you won't connect to the book. And I didn't connect to the book. I didn't connect to our main character, and so I DNF'd it. I even completely forgot that I attempted this year. So yeah, this one was kind of a dud. Unfortunately, I do know some people who really loved it, so yeah, this is going to be a hit or miss for a few people, I have felt. The next disappointment is something that it's a tentative disappointment, because I think it had to do with my frame of mind when I was reading it. But then I don't know, because sometimes I feel like I say this and I'm like, it was just me at the moment, but maybe I just didn't like it as much as I wanted to, and that, I don't know. But that is The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reid. I think that this one had everything to be a favorite. This is a Hungarian retelling, and like Hungarian inspired fantasy, more like. Basically, this girl gets given to this clan of woodsmen whom everyone is scared about, but she doesn't have any magical abilities because they didn't want to give the magical abled person to this clan, and then a romance ensues. When I was reading it, I just didn't care. I listened all the way through. I should have DNF'd it. I should have put it down and been like, okay, right now I'm not in the frame of mind to read this, but I pushed through, and I shouldn't have. I'm wondering if I will like it in a better frame of mind, or if this was just really disappointing to me. I was buddy reading this with my friend Sarah over at Kinds of Insanity, and she didn't like it either. And I don't know, I felt like maybe I will revisit it someday, because this has everything. I thought I was gonna love this. I thought I was gonna love this. From the cover, from the premise, from everything that it is, like the setting, like in a wood and stuff. I felt like I should love this, but I didn't. And so I don't know, maybe I will go back to it someday. I'm not sure, but at least it's a standalone. So if you're interested in this, maybe pick it up. I don't know. The next disappointment is, did I also buddy read this with? Gee, this was also buddy read. Sarah, what happened this year? Oh my god, it was The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. I mean, this one, it's funny that it ends up here, because in my Dark Academia deep dive video, I actually am super positive about the book for 75%. And then it kind of nosedives. It nosedives a lot, and that's why it's on this list, because I was having such a good time with it. I read his book, The Silent Patient, and I read it in one day. It was super compulsive, but I guessed the plot twist like immediately, and so it was like a little bit less exciting. I still like the story in and of itself and how he crafted it, but so I hoped that going into The Maidens that I wasn't gonna guess what it was, and that I was gonna be more on my toes, especially because it was Dark Academia and I was in such a Dark Academia mood. And it did deliver. It did deliver on the Dark Academia mood. 100%. And I thought it was so compelling. I wanted to read it all the time. And I did guess who it was. But until the 75% mark, I was like, it's okay because I'm having such a wonderful time. Like, I'm having such a good time. And then the explanation happens, and I had two main suspects, and one of my main suspects was the person who done it. But the explanation of why the person did what they did was like, what? This does not fit the story at all. This is weird. This is messed up. This is just messed up, and I didn't like it at all. I hated the ending. So it's hard to have because I'm so disappointed because it was so good for 75%, and then it just like nosedived, and that's why it's on this list, because the ending was such a disappointment, and it could have been such a good book, and it wasn't. Next up is a book that I'm way more positive on than the other ones that I've talked, and that is Son of the Storm by Suyi Davis Okumboa. I read this one, I don't know if it was also kind of situational. And then once I picked up the audiobook, it picked up for me a lot. The audiobook for this is definitely the way to go. At least for me, it was. I immersion read the second half of it, and then I read it really fast. I was really loving the beginning, and then the middle was a bit like, hard to get through, and then it was fine. But yeah, I thought I was going to absolutely love this. This is an African-inspired story about a guy who lives in this village that's kind of closed off from others, and he's a scholar, and then he kind of gets thrown out of the city for some other reason, and then he discovers all these other peoples, and he's like, what they've been teaching us back there is not exactly what's going on in the world, is it? And so that's kind of like the premise. Like I said, I leave the Goodreads page of every book if you want the description, but this one I really thought was going to be absolutely a new favorite, and it wasn't. So that's kind of a bummer, which is why it's on this list, because I really thought, okay, this is going to be in at least my top 20 of the year, and nowhere near. So unfortunately, but I do know, for example, Jashana loves this book, so if you want someone who absolutely loved it, go check out her channel. But yeah, for me it was a bit of a dud, unfortunately, but not enough that I didn't hate it. It was just like, oh, too bad. And now to my most controversial pick on the list. Alan, I hope you are not watching this. If you are, maybe you should click away now, because Fall of Babel by Josiah Bancroft. I mean, this series, I mentioned this in my favorites of the year. This series has an entry in my most surprising books of the year, my most disappointing books of the year, and my best books of the year. And it's a quartet. So, Fall of Babel, I pre-ordered it. I pre-ordered 3 things. I pre-ordered the ebook, the audiobook, and the physical copy. I was so excited for this. I read Sandland Ascends, and I have a video of it on the channel. You can check it out. I loved it so much. I loved it so much so that I immediately picked up Armor of the Sphinx right after it. You know me, I'm notorious for not finishing series, so having a ton of ongoing series all the time. I immediately picked up Armor of the Sphinx after Sandland Ascends. Armor of the Sphinx is on my best books of the year, which you can check it out. I love those first 2 books so much. Hot King I really loved as well, but now I feel like when I finished it, I was really in the hype of Hot King, and then now that I'm a bit more away from Hot King, there's some narrative things that he did in this, like the narrative structure of that book kind of bothered me, which is ultimately why I also didn't love Fall of Babel. I won't really say why. It's mainly that whole, when, you know, characters that start off together kind of like split into different groups. Sometimes it works really well in books, but here I just felt like it didn't. We started this book off with 200 pages of a character that we hadn't seen since Armor of the Sphinx, and I was really excited to get back to this character. I was like, what is going on with them? I want to know. And when we got there, it was just boring. It was just boring. I couldn't care. I couldn't care less about what was going on there. Wow, it was a drag. And then I thought, okay, good, we're done with this perspective. Now we're going back to these other perspectives. And then I was kind of like, I didn't care. I should have stopped. I should have DNF'd it or soft DNF'd it. I should put it down and then come back to it when I was more in the mood for it. I think that another thing that was a problem, and that I will do in my year-end recap of 2021, because I pre-ordered this book in multiple formats, I felt that compulsive need to read it when it came out. You know, because I was like, you have pre-ordered it so many ways, you need to read it as soon as it comes out, everyone is going to be talking about it, you need to read Fall of Babel the second it comes out. And I wasn't in the mood the second it came out. And then I thought, but if you don't read it now, you're going to read it later, and the more you postpone it, the less you'll remember of Hot King, and then you won't know, and then it makes everything worse, so just read it now. So I was kind of not allowing myself to mood read, and I forced myself to read this book, and ultimately it fell flat for me. I don't know if it was because of that, but then I've talked to so many other of my friends who felt the same, and I'm glad that I wasn't the only one. I'm glad I wasn't the only one who felt that way about Fall of Babel. Namely, Abby also didn't love it, but she didn't love the whole series. For me, it was really a disappointment because Every single book had been a 5-star until then, and I give this one 3, maybe 2.5. Yeah, I didn't love the ending of the Books of Babel, unfortunately. I did love the very, very end. That I loved. It was super bittersweet, I found, and I loved that, absolutely. But just the whole book, I just couldn't care less. It still stands as a series that marked my 2021 that I absolutely love, at least for the first 3 books. So it's still a good series. Just for me, the ending fell flat, but for a lot of people, it didn't. So I take that with a grain of salt. So those are my most disappointing books of the year. I'm a bit sad, of course, I don't like being negative, which is why my next video is going to be my most surprising books of the year, because we're ending this on a positive note, and then my last, I think, end of the year content is going to be a look back on 2021, what worked, what didn't work for me, and at least I think I'm going to do that video. I don't know yet, I think so, but yeah, that is going to be it for me today. Let me know what was your most disappointing book of the year last year, and if you read any of these, what you thought of them, specifically Fall of Babel. Did anyone else feel what I felt in Fall of Babel? Because yeah, it was just too bad. But yeah, that's going to be it for me today. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you just want to let me know that you were here, leave a dragon emoji, and until next time, happy reading.